Good morning. Thank you, Dan, for the reading. And we have gone through our short little series in February on love, and thanks to Michael and Glenn for adding to that as well. And so we're kind of moving on throughout the year, and we're going to kind of start to look at a few kind of short series as the year goes on, with an overarching theme of what our lectureship is going to be about this spring. And so the theme of our lectureship, if you've noticed, there's a poster on the bulletin board, and if you've checked out the website or different things, the theme for the lectureship this year is the world at our doorstep. And so we're going to be, on Sundays as well, going through different series with the focus of that in mind. And then obviously during lectureship, we're really going to specifically look directly at that theme. But we live in a place where we have people from all over the world have come and are living here. And people from a lot of different cultures and their cultural experiences are here. And so because of this, we have a unique opportunity to reach many people and bring the gospel to them and to serve them. And people that are, grew up in different ways than we did or have different connections all around the world. And so we are unique in that way. Not every place in the world is like that. As you travel around the world, there are some countries like that are very multicultural, but a lot of them aren't. And so we have that uniqueness here in Canada, and even in Carmen specifically, with kind of the idea of the world at our doorstep. And so this morning we're going to look at an example of how we keep our focus on what truly matters. As we are out into the world and as we look out in the things that we can do, what truly matters to keep our focus on it. And how important that is as we do that to show grace when dealing with different people. And people with different kind of backgrounds and histories than we have. And so this morning, we're going to look at Luke chapter 9 from our reading this morning, which is a really kind of pivotal moment in the gospel here. We can think of it as a bit of a hinge of the gospel. It's a short passage within a longer chapter in Luke chapter 9. But this little short section in verses 51 to 56 holds a lot of interesting moments in it. And it's kind of this hinge from one of what Jesus was doing to now the next step of what Jesus is going to do. And so up to this point, Jesus has been pretty popular where he has gone to teach. Large crowds have gathered when he has come around to see him, to hear him, to see miracles done, have healings performed. He's been received very warmly, and people really wanted to see him. So his reactions with people so far have been received very warmly. He's had his critics, with the religious leaders mostly at this point, but the people at large have really embraced him. But in this moment, we get this little account of a moment of rejection. A moment of rejection from a group of people. And so we see Jesus' full purpose is about to come. He is focusing on what is about to happen and what he needs to go through. And at this point, it really kind of starts to come into focus, where he is teaching and performing miracles with people, but he knows what's about to come and what he needs to do. So it's not just about teaching and miracles, but Jesus has a purpose beyond that. And that purpose is coming to a close. And we see Jesus setting his eyes on it. In verse 51, it says, when the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. So as we look at this phrase, set his face, certain translations that you may be looking at in your Bible may say steadfastly, or determined, or resolutely. So this is a Hebrew word implying a firm, kind of unshakable resolve. And so the word resolve, or the word resolute, is a real kind of powerful word. A word that holds a lot within it. Resolute describes a person, an action, or an idea marked by a firm determination, an unwavering purpose, and bold, steady commitment. What we'll see in this account is how Jesus was resolute in his purpose as he set his face to go to Jerusalem. He was determined, he was bold, he was steady. He had an unwavering purpose, knowing what he needed to do. This resolve is shown through grace in this moment with the people and Jesus' disciples. And that's a crucial teaching for his disciples to see, as many difficult things were about to happen. So we too are to have this resolute, grace-filled heart as we fulfill our purpose, as Jesus fulfilled his, that we are to be marked by a firm determination, an unwavering purpose, to be bold, to be steady, to have commitment, to be resolute. So we're going to look at this moment and see how Jesus dealt with it and see how his disciples dealt with it. So the resolve. Jesus understood what he was there to do. He was teaching many people, but even as Jesus taught and performed miracles, he understood what he was going to have to do. And specifically at this point, he is setting his eyes towards Jerusalem, towards the cross, focused on what he needed to do. So as he set his face to go to Jerusalem, Jesus going to the cross was a calculated choice. He didn't just find himself there. That was the plan from the beginning. And something he knew that he needed to do. He knew exactly what Jerusalem held for him. He knew that there would be a betrayal, that there would be a trial, and then ultimately the cross. Michael read for us this morning part of that experience, those things that he needed to go through, the pain he went through, the trial he went through. He knew all of this was coming. But he was setting his face and determined to do it. Luke says there that he set his face because the time had come for him to be taken up. Now this could simply refer to just Jerusalem itself, as when people said they were going to Jerusalem, they were going up to Jerusalem, just it was up geographically. But I also think it is referencing that he was looking beyond the cross, to the ascension, to be back home with the Father, setting his eyes on the future things. So true discipleship requires a set face. This means that we are sure, that we are focused, that we are unwavering, and that we are clear in our purpose. We learn this from many interactions that Jesus had with people, the way that he dealt with them, how he always taught and was so sure. When we look at our lives, are we committed to God's will, even when the path looks painful or difficult? Jesus knew what was going to happen when he entered Jerusalem and the pain and the difficulty that was about to happen. But he was committed to God's will. We see with Jesus an unshakable resolve. Now that's not always very easy. Many things are difficult when dealing with people. We kind of have expectations of how things might go. We have ways that we would deal with things and think, why would somebody deal differently? Why are they acting that way? And dealing with people can be difficult. But when we have an unshakable resolve and we're looking at the bigger picture, that can keep us focused on what is truly important. And we can look at the example of Jesus to know how to deal in those difficult times. We then see the rejection. Rejection is something that's never easy. When we bring an idea to someone and they turn it away, that can be difficult. We thought, I have a really good idea. I want to share that with somebody. And then you tell it to someone and they go, that kind of stinks. Right? That's difficult. We can feel hurt. We can feel ignored. And this can happen in many different ways in our lives, but it can be especially difficult to be rejected when we are sharing our faith with people. When they don't show any interest. When they just tell us, I'd rather not talk about that. It's so important to us. And when someone rejects it, that hurts. When we or someone close to us are rejected, we can have a tendency to act strongly. Right? To seek out our version of justice. How dare they turn that person away? How dare they not give them that job or that position or whatever they're seeking? What we see in this encounter here is that Jesus is not being concerned with the rejection, but his disciples are. And his disciples wanting to act strongly. When rejection comes, it can blind us to our real purpose. So we see this rejection with the Samaritan conflict here. In verses 52 and 53, it says, and he sent messengers ahead of him who went and entered a village of the Samaritans to make preparations for him. But the people did not receive him. His face was set toward Jerusalem. We see here the Samaritan conflict. The Samaritans rejected Jesus both because of who he was as a prominent Jewish teacher and because of where he was going. Because he was looking towards Jerusalem. Personal and religious prejudice often blinds people to the real presence of God. And so to the Samaritans, Jerusalem wasn't just another city, but Jerusalem was this theological error that they saw. The primary point of contention was the proper place for the temple and the presence of God. The Jewish view was that God chose Mount Zion in Jerusalem. We see this in Psalm 132, where it says, for the Lord has chosen Zion, for he has desired it for his dwelling place. But the Samaritans, they saw that God chose Mount Gerizim, where the temple should be and where he should dwell. They believed this was the original site where Abraham and Jacob built altars, and where the blessings were pronounced in the time of Joshua. And we see that in Deuteronomy chapter 11, where it says, and when the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are entering to take possession of it, you shall set the blessing on Mount Gerizim and the curse on Mount Ebal. So there's a lot of history here, and a lot of history that could be added to make this point. But for today's sake, we can see that for Jesus to be looking toward Jerusalem would not sit well with this Samaritan village. This was a place this audience would have despised. Simply because Jesus was looking toward Jerusalem was reason enough for this village to not receive him. When we are resolutely following God's plan, not everybody's going to cheer for us. Not everyone is going to embrace us fully. Sometimes paths that you thought would work, places you thought you could go, people you thought you could talk to, will be blocked and won't work the way that you thought it maybe should. Not everyone will be on our side. Being rejected is not a sign of failure. It's often simply just a byproduct of being on the right path. That we know there will be times when rejection will come. And they saw that here in this Samaritan village. But then we see this temptation of how are they going to react to this rejection. When rejection hits and people refuse the message, we can be tempted to act out in ways that aren't really that helpful. We see how Jesus reacts to this rejection, but many times we do not react very well when rejection comes our way. So in here we'll see how a couple of the disciples reacted and see that their hearts maybe were in the right place for Jesus, but not for the people. And this can be the trick, where we feel that we have the right heart to defend the gospel, but we forget to love the people we're dealing with. We feel we are showing love by giving them the truth, but we really sometimes can be forcing our teaching into a group that is not ready to receive it. We can be blinded by our zeal to go and teach and spread the gospel and not showing real true love. So there's a temptation to react when we are rejected. And we see how James and John here wanted to react when this Samaritan village did not receive Jesus. Verses 54 and 55 says, "And when the disciples, James and John, saw it, they said, 'Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume them?' But he turned and rebuked them." James and John are two interesting guys. They are referred to in Mark chapter 3 as sons of thunder. It says, "James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, to them he gave the name Boanerges," which means sons of thunder. So this was a name that Jesus gave to these two brothers. And while the text doesn't say exactly why Jesus chose this name at that moment, their later actions kind of provide a little bit of insight for us, a little bit of evidence for this title and why they may have been called this. These guys had a bit of a reputation of being fairly fiery. And we see in this account that James and John, their immediate reaction to this rejection of Jesus was to call down fire from heaven, to consume the people, to destroy them. How dare they not listen to you? Earlier in this chapter, we see the transfiguration. And so possibly they were thinking then of Elijah and citing the example of Elijah wanting a big spectacle to show the people their error. Something that would make a big statement. They wanted to use God's power to destroy those who were seemingly against their mission. But they displayed misguided zeal. Their passion was there. They loved Jesus. They wanted to see everybody embrace him. Their passion was there, but their emotions could get the better of them. Right? They could think that this would show people who reject the Lord. See what happens when you turn away Jesus. Look what can happen to you. Instead of showing simply just patience and love. As we see with these two men throughout their time after this, that love came through in their lives. Both of these men were influential in teaching of the early church and spreading the gospel to many different places. But they had to learn that. They had to see and control their zeal for Christ. For us, it is easy to confuse our egos with righteous indignation. We see something so horribly wrong and we react. We want to react in a harsh and even in a violent way. We want there to be immediate consequences for people's rejection. This is the Son of God, after all. We want to see a reaction to that. So how did Jesus react? Jesus rebukes these men. He rebukes the disciples. Jesus didn't come to burn down a village. Right? He came to save them. He came to save the world. And that was his focus. Jesus knew his purpose. And it was not blasting people who did not receive him. We cannot win people to Jesus by reacting the way that the world does. And letting our own egos or our own desires to take hold. So how do we react when people reject our faith? Do we wish for their judgment, as James and John were trying to do there? Or do we pray? We pray for grace for them. This can be hard to do. But as we grow and we mature, this becomes easier to show grace and to show love. And not desire harsh outcomes on people that reject the faith. We then see the persistence. When the Samaritans rejected Jesus, he did not act the way James and John did. Jesus was persistent in his purpose and his pursuit. He showed grace to the people and just kept his focus on where he needed to be as they moved on. Verse 56 says they went to another village. They simply moved on. There's profound humility here. Jesus doesn't argue with the people, trying to convince them that they should embrace him. Doesn't try to convince them to see the truth or to retaliate. He simply continues his mission. The rejection of one village didn't stop the march toward Jerusalem. The mission was too important to be derailed by groups that were not ready to accept it. And so we should not let our rejection from the world affect our mission and purpose. Rejection hurts, but we need to stay resolute and not let those who reject us dictate our actions, but always be looking at the bigger picture. As we see what Jesus did in this scenario, we then look at how we set our face. For Jesus, the cross was the goal, but love was his motivation all the way through it. Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem so that we wouldn't have to face the judgment we deserved. As Michael talked about this morning, that he was willing to do it. He was determined to go through all the things that he needed to go through. And he was motivated to do it. Jesus had set his sight on Jerusalem because that is where he needed to go. He had one goal in sight. So for us, what is the goal we are setting our face towards? Well, these three things can help us when setting toward our mission. The first is to resist that urge, to retaliate against rejection. When we go and teach the gospel, there will be many people who don't want to hear it. Who don't want to hear about Jesus, don't want to hear the implications of believing him. There will be pushback and rejection. But it is important for us to show love to those who are rejecting the gospel. John 15, verses 18 and 19, Jesus says, "If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you." Jesus knew this was going to come for us, that there would be rejection from the world. and even hatred from the world. Jesus had made that statement right after talking about love, loving each other. So we are not alone in this rejection. So we are to resist the urge then to retaliate. That we simply need to show love, and plant the seed, and move on when we need to. The second is to resolve to finish what God has started. We can become so distracted, so easily distracted by things of this world. In the world we are in today, there are distractions everywhere. Things pulling us in every direction at once. It is important that we focus on the goal and be looking towards continuing it. I know it says there to finish what God has started, but we understand that we will never really finish it. It will just continue on. But we stay focused, right? Focused on continuing to show the gospel, to continue to show Jesus, to show that love and grace that Jesus showed. The third is to rest in the persistence of God, of Jesus' grace. When we're out in the world, and even when we are discussing things with each other, it's crucial to remember grace. And we can find comfort and rest in grace. Knowing that we do not have to say everything perfect and make sure we get nothing wrong ever. Because that's just an impossible task. But to know that grace is abundant. So we're not stressing ourselves out when trying to accomplish this mission, trying to do everything just right. That we can rest knowing that we have grace. We are encouraged as we look at the story and we see the perfect way that Jesus handled it. We're also, I think, relieved to see the imperfect way the disciples wanted to handle it. We are people that will make many mistakes. But when we focus on Jesus, we have a purpose. We sometimes may feel that we want to throw down fire on people. We'll not always handle it properly. But as we grow and as we are led by the Spirit, we can make an impact with people. Try to bring them closer to Jesus. We see Jesus setting his face toward Jerusalem to do what he needed to do as encouragement for us to set our face towards spreading the gospel in love to the world. Thank you.